Agility in Mind is, I suppose some people might say, a management consultancy, but we perhaps don't like to do that, even though we do continue to receive awards for being one of the top management consultancies in the UK.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Tech Times exclusive. Today, we're talking to Mr. Andrew Jones. He's the CEO of Agility in Mind. Agility in Mind is a service that helps ambitious organizations navigate growth by assisting in collaboration, both internal and external. In short, I guess you could say they really streamline or refine the effectiveness of communication. And this is a major benefit to a lot of companies, whether new or established. So thank you for joining us today, Andrew.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in. Just give us a quick background, a quick breakdown of Agility in Mind.
Well, you summed it up really well, that Agility in Mind is, I suppose some people might say, a management consultancy, but we perhaps don't like to do that, even though we do continue to receive awards for being one of the top management consultancies in the UK. But really what we like to do is to go and have an impact in organizations that are suffering some of the challenges because they're being successful, because they're scaling up. What we get really excited about is where companies have sort of proved their hypothesis, they've taken something to market, and they're now just on that growth path. They've got the backing from their investors, and they now need to go and prove that and start to think about how they provide that return. And what we like to do is to really have that impact with the people in the organization, to help them organize so that they are fit for purpose, to be truly agile. They can respond to change, but they can go through those challenges of getting a lot of people working against common goal.
Okay, I see. And what really was it, a personal experience or a professional experience, something that you may have noticed in a previous company that really inspired you, that really pushed you to pursue this venture?
Well, it was personal experience that does actually go back quite a few years. But I started my career as a technologist. I love to create software and hardware products. As an engineer, the thing that gave me a lot of reward was seeing a working solution for clients. But the process that I found rewarding was collaboration with people, was really trying to understand properly what the business need was. And rather than thinking I need to go and create a solution because it's written down in a contract, it was more about the collaboration and truly understanding the business drivers and delivering that and coming up with better solutions. So that's where I started from. I just thought that was how things were. But as my sort of career grew and I became more senior, responsible for multi-million-pound projects and programs, what I started to find was that first of all, the reputation for software industry in particular was pretty poor. There were so many failed projects, millions and probably billions of pounds or dollars being wasted. Requirements documents, big, thick, multi-million-pound documents, never getting used. And it was just waste. But the failures were sort of personal as well, because they were career limiting. They caused people to have anxiety. They, limited wealth, had impact on the bottom line of organizations. The impact wasn't trivial. It wasn't just something that we should live with. And I think I didn't realize what the root cause, but it wasn't until I moved to a company that sort of believed in sort of this agile way of working as a software house. And I realized that this sort of agile way that they promoted with their clients was very straightforward. But I saw it in action, and I saw the collaboration with clients, and I saw it that going into a development with a client, we had a reasonable idea of what needed to be achieved, but we didn't know everything. And the client had a reasonable idea of what they needed, but they didn't know everything. And I just found out that as we went through, we discovered a lot, and we came up with great solutions. And I said, but that's how it used to be. So I learned, that's where I learned. And this was working with big clients like Standard & Poor's, for example. And I do remember one of the owners, one of the big guys from Standard & Poor's, visiting the site in the office in Canary Wharf one day. So he'd flown in. He was probably coming home for a big meeting, but he walked through the development area and he stopped and he saw the boards that showed what was going on these projects. And he said, "Oh, tell me about this." And they explained it. I said, "Right. Well, if you've got any problems with that, just let me know, because I will be able to help." And it made things visible, rather than it being hidden away. And it's just a really simple example of applying these sort of techniques and getting collaboration means that you've got a much bigger chance of success. So I left that company. I decided to set up Agility in Mind, but I do tell the story. I'm quite frank about it. At the time, it was about paying my bills. I needed,
of course, yeah,
I wanted to do it in a different way, and I had this idea that I'd got some useful skills for people, and I could be beneficial. But I also needed to go and pay the mortgage. So
right.
So I set up Agility in Mind, and very quickly secured a couple of consulting contracts, and that's how it started up. And then I sort of met up with Ed Scotcher, and he joined me, and then we just sort of incrementally developed our proposition and our services over the last 10 or 11 years.
Okay, wow. Well, yeah, that makes me think. Of course, you had an idea, and not necessarily an idea. You discovered a way through your own series of trial and error, just overall experience, and you kind of developed a way to make things flow much more smoothly. You were noticed, and then you was like, you know what, I think I can do this. So of course, in the beginning, I'm sure you had those questions, like, oh shoot, is this the right way? Is this really going to pan out? At what point was it that maybe you got a sense of relief that you had made the right decision?
I think it took a little while before I thought that I made the right decision. I think a little while. I mean, 6 months, let's say.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
It wasn't, years.
I mean, when you got a good idea, you've got a good idea.
It seemed like a long time. That's all I'd say.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sure those 6 months probably seemed like 2 years or something.
Yeah. I have to say that one of the two sort of early sort of engagement with customers that I had, I could see that, yes, this is beneficial. This is going to be good. I got involved in a big government sort of contract, helping somebody else, and that wasn't so good. That wasn't, I think the cultural aspects of it, and perhaps the behaviours of other consultancies. I thought, no, we need to be different to that. I'm not interested in really creating something that is about driving bottom line, even though I know that I had bills to pay.
Right.
I'm not interested just in doing sort of time and materials contracts to earn the money. It needs to be better than that. So I think I learned quite quickly that I needed to sort of a different proposition for people.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, I think that's what they say a lot is, if you find something to do that you really enjoy doing, and you find value in your service, then it makes it all that much better, because you're not really chasing, that bottom line. You have something that has become a part of you, really, and it's not something that you do because you have to. You do it because you want to.
Yeah, and I think the philosophy we have is, if we go and deliver on the promise that we make to our clients, that's when we'll get the return.
Right.
And by doing that, we have clients that come back to us years later, and they say to us, I've come back, I'm in this different role now, but I've come just to you because we know that you will deliver what you say you're going to deliver. You will come and do it, and you'll do it in your own special way, And that's the reward for us, that by going and doing the right thing, we know it will lead to the right results for us.
Right. That's a testimony for sure to not only your effectiveness, but your grasp of the situation for these companies, these clients. Anyone can sell something once, but to sell that thing to the same person more than once, it takes real. I'm not going to say skill, but it's definitely a personality trait that you got to have to be successful. That the return business is where it's at, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we've got a team. We've got a team of people that go and provide the services, and it's credit to them that they go and do the job. They go and deliver what's promised. But I suppose for us as the leaders of the organisation, credit to us we've created that culture. We've created a culture that means people feel like they can just go and do the right thing for clients. And if they say what they believe is right, but they make a mistake in how it gets delivered, we don't worry about it. I think it's still to give them the support to do that.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, so I noticed you've mentioned quite a few times about agility and agile. And for me personally, and I'm sure maybe one or two at least of our viewers, they may be confused how that term is used within this spectrum. So could you maybe give us a little difference, or maybe help the less informed to understand exactly what it is you are?
Yeah, of course. And with a lot of these things. And especially with something like Agile that's been around, for a couple of decades at least now, people do end up creating a lot of different products and services that can cause confusion, and there's lots of hype that goes with these things. So I do understand that it can become confusing, but actually at their heart, they are very straightforward. Okay. The agility thing, I think, is the outcome that we want for organizations. We want to achieve business agility. In other words, we want to be adaptable. We want to be able to respond to change. The classic, or the current example is, how did we respond to COVID, to pandemic? What stopped us from responding to that? Now, actually, a lot of organizations had to. They had no choice. Some organizations didn't, and they're no longer around. But we had to respond to change. But we had to. And I think if we've got business agility as a cultural thing in an organization, it means we're always looking to adapt. We're always looking to inspect and change the way that we work. So it becomes a cultural thing. It becomes a way of always challenging the status quo.
Okay.
Whereas I would say the agile bit, although you can have lots of philosophical debates about that too, I would always take it back to where did it start? Where did that word start to be used and abused? It was with the Agile Manifesto, and that was put together because leaders in the software industry in particular identified all the problems that I mentioned earlier about failed delivery. They were trying different frameworks, and they put this Agile Manifesto together, and it was just the 4 lines of a simple manifesto. And I think that's what defines the Agile piece. But at its core, it's simple. Individuals and interactions are more important than processes and tools. That's quite a straightforward approach. Yeah. Is it more important that we talk together each day than we follow a process and we can tick the boxes? Well, of course, it's more important that we talk together. Right,
absolutely. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, you need processes, and everything are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them, procedures and SOPs and all that stuff. But you really tend to lose a lot of the human essence when communication and collaboration are not prioritized, I guess you should say.
And prioritization. How do we make decisions? Mm-hmm. Decision making in an organization is absolutely key, because obviously you want to make the best decisions that you want,
Right.
But you also need to do it in a timely manner.
Mm-hmm.
And who's best placed to do that? Well, it is about getting the right people. And
Right.
are we making decisions on behalf of customers that we've never spoken to, for example?
Mm-hmm.
So it all boils down to how do we best collaborate, as you mentioned earlier, internally and externally. How do we collaborate best with our customers? How do we understand the true needs of our customers when let's say we're developing an app? How do we understand the diversity needs of our customers? How do we step into their shoes? How do we get away from a lot of the biases that are ingrained in technology?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, absolutely. I see it. During my research, and I'm not afraid to admit it, I researched for about 2 days. Don't have the best idea, but I think I'm much more adept now than I was, starting on the weekend. But during said research, I discovered the word transformation
Mm-hmm.
all over the place,
Yeah.
but it was never really, again, broken down for the layman's. If you maybe could give us a little bit behind exactly what transformation it is that you're facilitating for these companies and organizations.
Yeah. I mean, it's really big change, in terms of transformation. But look, it's confession time, I suppose, because I can say and admit to the fact that people certainly look for transformation services, and there are many different ways of transforming an organization. It depends who's selling you the product or the service, in terms of what that transformation is going to be. But we use transformation because we're talking about sort of big change to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
When I start talking to a client about that agenda, and it's not always possible to change their minds, but I typically will advise against starting to use the transformation word. And the reason for that is that as soon as you start using that within an organization, people latch onto it, and they see, right, things are going to change tomorrow, or I've got to do this, otherwise I'm not part of that transformation, and it in itself, it creates a whole culture.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what I would really like to get organizations to is related to what I said earlier, is where you've got that ongoing, that evolution of change, so that we're always scanning, we're always challenging what we do and how we do it, and we won't have to get to this point where we have to transform. And it's true of big organizations as it's true in organizations that are relatively new and they're going through that sort of scaling. What we really do, I suppose, is have an intervention in organizations so that we can have that impulse of change and to set them off in a different direction. And the reason that we think about impact is that change doesn't happen without thought. Change only happens by, first of all, thinking about it. So you've got to think about it before you take an action. So if you think about that corporately, the organization has to think about it and then put action into place. And that whole sort of thought process is crucial at the leadership level. So leaders in organizations have to say, right, I need to think differently before we change this organization. So that's transformative in itself. That's a transformation if you can get a shift in mindset. And we've been doing this in outside of technology over the last 12 months with a large sort of legal services firm, so a firm made up of lawyers and supporting practitioners. And it's been interesting to develop a leadership program that helps them to see how they can change their thinking, behave differently, and then show this to the organization. That in itself becomes transformative.
Right.
But what we want to do is to have that impact that moves them on, so that ultimately they can sort of be sort of self-sustaining, and they can manage this continuous improvement and continuous development.
Okay, I see. would it be fair, and please, I just feel like this might be, you know, would it be fair to say that your service can help an organization, instead of it being for, I don't know, for example, you know, a company of 500 people, instead of it being 500 ideas for change, you kind of turn this you kind of give this organization one brain, like, because now the communication and the collaboration is all coming together. So on this path of change and, you know, transformation, everything becomes more, not to overuse the word, but more beneficial for the organization as a whole, rather than having, you know, sporadic thoughts. Well, I think we should do this, and, you know, and then everybody, like, your service really brings that thought together.
It can do, and I think it brings it together. It's the role of the leadership within that's the crucial thing. I think is that we can often have a conversation where leaders of an organization say, yeah, we need to change, but it's for everybody else. So we need to say, look, it needs to start with you, and you need to give some vision. And that's what's going to unite the organization. You need to present what that vision is for, how it's going to be for your company. And that will align the rest of the company. So you need to be clear about what you're trying to achieve, communicate it well. And that will mean that we still want lots of ideas coming through, but they're going to be aligned with what we're trying to achieve, rather than they're just a lot of ideas that you've then got to try to turn into something useful. Let's get the alignment first.
Okay, I see. So, yeah. So I've seen on your website that you know, there's, I get, it's broken down into 3 separate things that you guys do, but I think they're all kind of, you know, like the workings of a clock. You know, one's not as good without the other one type thing. So if you could maybe give us a breakdown of, you know, exactly what it is that Agility in Mind really does, as far as agile transformation, the coaching, and the training.
Okay, yeah, and you're quite right. They're sort of interrelated. The agile transformation piece I've sort of tried to describe already, but that piece is most definitely helping an organization to change the way they're working, because they know that there's a fundamental problem with maybe getting their products to market, for example. So that's the transformation piece. So we're working with them, and within that, there can be a sort of a mix of high level services, and some fairly traditional strategic consulting might go in that piece. Most definitely shaping product strategy, but setting out that agenda for change is that starting point with that transformation. But to support that, we need to work with people, and that's where the coaching piece comes in, agile coaching. And agile coaching, ours is a little bit different, because it's still about having impact and not about creating dependencies. So in other words, what we want to do is to support people to make change so that they don't need us anymore, because they're pretty confident about what the changes, the future changes. So it's about going in, so building confidence with people. The training, agile training, supports that as well, because what we tend to do is to kickstart that transformation by training people in some of the fundamentals of agile working. So we kickstart it, we give them some insight, that sort of pushes them into action, and then our coaching is there to support them putting that into action, because as soon as they try, if they're left alone, it will fail, because they will come across blockers in the organization. So we will help them. And because we've got those relationships already formed at the senior level, we will go to the senior and say, look, these are the things that are going to stop you achieving your results, and it might actually be you, so that's stopping them, or it might be these things that you can unpick. So that's why they all fit together. There are some clients, for example, one of the sort of the world's biggest software manufacturer, we provide training programs across the globe for them, from North South America, right across Europe, and a little bit in Asia Pacific as well. So for them, it's largely about training, but we're still trying to have that impact with individuals. So training can also be discreet in that way. And coaching can be, but to lesser effect. What we don't do is just provide people into businesses long term just to be another employees. We're not interested in just sort of placing people just to go and earn the fee. We want it to be impactful always.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. So, we're talking about, you spoke a lot about senior leadership as well as, team members, team leader, like the whole spectrum. So who do you think should be more excited to have your service? Like, would it be the employers or the employees? Like, or is it equally beneficiary, just in different ways?
I'd say there's somebody else that could be more excited actually, and that's the investors.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So a number of clients that we're working with, that we are helping them to make that return on investment.
Right.
And so there's a very clear proposition to private equity, for example, where they're placing a bet on the organization,
Mm-hmm.
and we are there to help deliver that. So they could get quite excited by the impact that we had. Leaders, I think, should be. I think they're probably the ones that I'm the most worried at first, because it could be most impactful on them. Okay. But if they're convinced about the promise they've made to their investors, they should be excited that we will help them get there. That's for sure. And then for the vast majority of people in the organization, then the excitement comes because suddenly they're not just being treated as resources to achieve somebody else's goal, but they're treated as people with skills and ideas and with real lives that can come and make a contribution. And that's what we want. Because if people start to feel differently about the way they work and the way that they're valued, and they understand that what they do is aligned and makes a great contribution to the success of the company, it's a great motivator. And that's how I certainly would want to feel about turning up for a job each day. Right,
absolutely. I 100% agree that the idea that like you said in the beginning, there's been multi-millions lost on the ineffectiveness of communication, in other tech companies and any market, I assume. So to have the idea that you go to work and you will basically be wasting very little of your time is a huge incentive to continue getting up and going to work.
Yeah.
And then you have, you like you said, you're educating people. People are becoming not just cogs in a wheel or just cogs in the machine, but they're becoming impactful in their own right. I mean, I can imagine, just that would feel incredible. And from you have to build from the ground up. So like you said, the vast majority of people are doing this every day. But now you start to see, and of course, the more that that the vast majority of people feel important, then the better your company's going to do. It's just a natural progression.
Absolutely.
So that's I feel like your service and your ideology is for certain companies, it could either be like a shot of espresso for those up and coming companies that's like, okay, this is starting to work. We're starting to boom. Now we have to really start to organize. And it could also be that life preserver for those companies. That's like, we were doing so good for 15 years, but it's a different world now.
Absolutely.
So you guys have to. So it's very interesting what it is that you do, and just how important something that we take for granted so much as communication.
Yeah,
it's so vital to everything, and it's really incredible.
And the world has changed, and in the last sort of 18 months, and there are so many more opportunities to be more collaborative. Certainly in the field that we work in, in sort of technology, there's so many more opportunities to be more collaborative. We as a team of consultants, we're a lot more collaborative than we used to be internally, because there's just more opportunity to do it.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, speaking of this I hate to say this, I really don't like it, but I mean it's just the fact of the matter. This new world we're living in, where it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just maybe a little bit of my conservative side, not wanting to change too much from what I feel comfortable in. But the world is different, and there's nothing we can do about it. And it hit us like a truck in the night. Nobody's seen it coming, but it's here, and we're dealing with it. So would you say that your service is obviously your service will change? I mean, you guys are, you're facilitating change everywhere else. I'm sure you guys are changing just, at the same time. But would you say that it is more or less applicable now in this current, it's not even fair to say workplace, this current work environment, because, people are home, people are on the beach, and, do you feel that you can make a bigger impact now that people are so spread out but still working for one organization?
I think it's different for sure. It's quite difficult to say whether it's greater or smaller the impact. Definitely, organizations are more accessible. What I really like is that sort of at an individual level, people are now to some extent being able to make a decision about how they want to work, what suits them best. And from a sort of a diversity perspective, having some flexibility around that for people's personal needs, I think, is a great thing. So that actually changing things at that level makes it easier, because you can start to say to people, look, we just need to find a way to achieve the goals. Yeah. Our only real constraint is the amount of time that we've got, because we've got a limited amount of time in our lives, haven't we? So that's a constraint that we have, but we can't do anything about that. But what we can do is to use that more effectively. So I think with sort of challenging leaders, for example, to sort of change their thinking about how they run the organization is a starting point. And as soon as we start to break those barriers down, that it's not now about measuring the amount of time people are working, it's about what are we achieving, what are the outcomes we're achieving. That's a fundamental shift. So I think that opens up opportunities too. There are some things that where some of the sort of the informal communication that you have to work differently at, the sort of things, the chats in the office, those sorts of things. You have to find different ways to get those sorts of impromptu conversations.
Right.
But the way that I do it is that although you were very kind in saying that I must be very busy, I don't have a lot of stuff that's fixed in my calendar. Right. So I can be talking to people. I'm really flexible about when and how I talk to either our team or our customers or anybody else. And we have very few sort of set, fixed meetings in our personal schedules. It's a bit different with our clients, that we see their schedules and they're still packed full. So we're just trying to change those sorts of things. So I think just the opportunities are different in terms of the ways of working. We've changed our proposition. So rather than that traditional consultancy model of day rates and expenses, we just say, look, we know what you're trying to achieve. This is a fixed rate, and we'll just come and do that. If it takes us more time, then that's fine. If it takes us less time, then that's fine too. But we know what you're trying to achieve. We'll fix the cost, and we can do it because we know we drive out efficiencies in our own model. So we've learned quite quickly to change our approach.
Right. Well, I mean, that goes back to what you said about the time constraints and how the clocking in and but in seats for 8-9 hours a day is virtually a thing of the past. Like that's, I'm sure people, I mean, for me personally, I've been working from home for about a year and a half. Yeah, I got kind of, I'm not going to say lucky. That's a horrible choice of words. I got there was a sweet spot that I hit right there, right before everything went south, and I was like, you know what, I can do this from home. I can do this from home. And but there's times when I miss the office. Like you miss that, like you say, talking to people, the water cooler conversations, and there are definite times when that is missed. But yeah, I mean, that's just the way the world is now, and we have to adapt and overcome, as they say. And to your point about not being a very busy man, I think that just pays testimony to, because as we talked about before, this is your brainchild, like for the most part, if not completely. This is 100% you. So that's a testimony to the man that you are, that you manage your time and you communicate in a way that's so effective that you have time to have impromptu conversations rather than, bouncing off the wall for 8 or 9 hours a day, because those skills are not part of your repertoire. So I think this company is a direct reflection of you. And just the fact, like I said, that you have time to sit and talk with someone for half an hour at a time. I mean, that just the proof is in the pudding, as they say. Like that's it right there. So that's what you are teaching, and not just people, but organizations to do. You can maximize all of this time, and then again reflected in your flat rate, because like you said, it's not about the time put in, but about the product delivered. So yeah, it's all coming together for me right now. It's all making sense. Yeah, but I mean, I think this is a great service. I'm sure some of our viewers right now are probably like, man, I wish my company had that. Or if even if they are in the leadership, it's like, wow, how can we do this? So since those questions are obviously popping in people's heads, could you tell us, is it agility.im? How can they, get a hold of your service?
To get a hold of our service, then yeah, straightforward on the website, agility.im, or if you're in North America, .us.
Okay.
If you get in touch via the website, you will get in touch with me anyway, and I will pay an active interest in that. So we can have those initial conversations. There's some great stuff on the website. I mean, clearly, websites are also designed to address SEO. So sometimes that can work against you in terms of understanding it from a human perspective. It's one of the things we have to live with a little bit. So if there's anything that's unclear on there, then certainly get in touch. One of the things that we're quite proud of that came out of lockdown, we were very successful globally in having a series of frequent agile questions, so FAQs, but frequent agile questions, and
right.
We got a lot of global readership for those. And so during that sort of first lockdown, we said, okay, what can we do to make that more engagement? So we came up with a series of FAQs live events, and in short events, we would just pick a topic, and it will be a based on one of those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And those prove to be really interesting for people, and then come along, and they tend to be smallish groups that get together, facilitated by one or two of our experts, sometimes experts from external organizations as well, and we just have an open conversation about those principles. So certainly have a look at those. The sort of the current things that we're doing, we have got this interest in getting that proposition across to the investment community, because we're there to help. You put a lot of trust in leaders of organizations, and a lot of trust in their hypothesis and the potential for their business. We think we can make a big difference of accelerating the delivery on that value. The other initiatives coming out of what does it really mean to grow an organization? What are you really trying to do? And what does that mean for leadership? So we're putting quite a lot of thought, sort of ideas out there into various media to get that conversation going as well.
Okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, for the viewers, these links will definitely be in the description. And one last question, Andrew. So what would you say is next in line for Agility in Mind?
Next in line for us as an organization, I think over the next sort of 12, 24 months, we will continue to grow at the right sort of pace, that's sustainable and manageable. As I sort of alluded to, I think it's really starting to capitalize on the impact that we're having in those scale up organizations. And that's where we will focus a lot of our effort of having an impact there and helping to get that return. And I think by doing that, that's going to be great for us on a global basis. We are growing our North America entity as well, mainly because we were getting a lot of interest coming from the US in particular and Canada to some extent. So we now have a dedicated team in the US to do that. So that's quite exciting for us too.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And I just want to put emphasis on one thing that Andrew said for the viewers. There are regularly scheduled live frequent agile questions, or you may be more familiar with the frequently asked, the FAQs. I think that is something that is I keep using this word, but it fits so well. It would be super beneficial if you guys, if you have any type of questions, you can check out the website. The links will be in the description, and just join the live and ask whatever questions you may have, or just sit back and listen, whatever your thing is. But Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great conversation. I think your service is incredible, and I look forward to watching, what happens with Agility in Mind in the future.
Thank you.
All right, great. So, okay, Tech Timers, that was another exclusive, a great conversation with a very interesting man with a very interesting company. And of course, as always, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share, the whole nine. That's what we do on YouTube. It helps algorithm, and it'll keep us going and bringing you more interesting and innovative discussions like what we had today with Mr. Andrew Jones. So yeah, thanks again, and we will see you guys next time.